right, folks, welcome to this awesome event. Let's call it a happy hour. It's a closed event. We are not broadcasting live, so it's just us here to discuss, yep, our night of coaching legends and American heroes. And we're really just going to have a discussion about the things that we love most, coaching, leadership. And for tonight, it's about Army sprint football trying to beat Navy this weekend. Okay. I am going to remain neutral. I'm Swiss, right? Just because we represent all branches of the military, and I will not show favoritism either way. But I will cheer for our guests who are on with us tonight. And I am so grateful to have with us Coach Mark West, who, if you don't know Mark already, he's a retired lieutenant colonel. He's in his 13th year as head coach of the sprint football team, and he graduated from the U.S. Military Academy in 1991. Through Mark's first 12 seasons, Army West Point has an overall record of 67-13. That's unreal. So, Mark, you're doing something right in coaching and leadership. And he has 5 CSFL championships under his belt after winning back-to-back titles in 2012 and 2013. So a 91 graduate of the U.S. Military Academy, West starred for the sprint football squad as a cadet. So he played there as well and was a 3-year starter at quarterback for the lightweight football team, leading the Black Knights to an overall 17-1-1 record in that time span. He also led the Black Knights to 3 league championships and 2 wins over arch rival Navy. He served as team captain and was named the first ever Kays Award recipient as the most valuable player in the league his senior year. West was honored with the Colonel John A. Robinson Award in 1988 and 1990 as the Army lightweight football team's most valuable player. Coach West served in various duty assignments to include Germany, Fort Hood, Kuwait, Fort Knox, Saudi Arabia, and Iraq before retiring in 2015. So welcome, Mark.
Hey, thank you for having me. It's great to be here.
Yes, and with Mark is another close friend of Soldiers of Sidelines, a phenomenal athlete and scholar. We have retired Colonel Liam Collins, who is also a doctor, PhD Liam Collins. Liam earned a BS in mechanical engineering, specifically with aerospace from the U.S. Military Academy, and has a master's in public affairs and a PhD from the Woodrow Wilson School of Public and International Affairs at Princeton University. So Liam is the executive director of the Viola Foundation currently and the Madison Policy Forum, and a permanent member with the Council on Foreign Relations. He's a retired Special Forces colonel. Liam served in a variety of special operations assignments and conducted operational deployments to Afghanistan, Iraq, Bosnia, the Horn of Africa, and South America. And I'm really proud to say that, Liam has joined me on a podcast where we discussed some really cool stuff that we're going to revisit today. Specifically, you're gonna, if you don't mind rehashing that Halo drop experience, because that's kind of mind blowing. But welcome, Liam.
Unmute myself here. Yeah, great to be with you guys again.
So my favorite thing, Liam, you're gonna kick us off, okay? I just need you to tell this group why you hate Rudy.
Oh yeah, okay, right. So when we were lieutenants, my roommate and I were watching the movie Rudy. And everybody cheers, right? We got to feel good about why we got to cheer for this underdog. He wasn't an underdog, right? He wanted to go to Notre Dame. If you want to go to Notre Dame, you need to have grades. Just like if you want to go to West Point, you need to have the grades. You can't just want it. You have to work for it, right? Dreams only work if you do. So you have to work for it. So I'm not going to cheer for Rudy. If he wanted to play at Notre Dame, he could have studied, worked hard in high school, worked his butt off to get there. Eventually, I guess he got there, but I'm not going to cheer for someone like that. I'm going to cheer for a worker.
And that's why you're with us tonight, because that is setting the tone of high performance. So how can we set that mindset into every single one of the folks that we coach and lead? And I just think it's hysterical because I love that movie. I feel like it's inspirational. And then once you told me that story, I was like, I never really thought about it that way. So awesome. Now, Mark, this is a big week for you. What do you got coming up this weekend?
Well, we got a little game on Saturday against a team called Navy at 1:00. Yeah. So no, it is a huge week for us. It's our star game. And really it's the first point in the season where both teams will kind of find out what we're made of. So It's always a great game. Typically comes down to the wire. So we're really looking forward to it.
Well, awesome. So I don't know if everybody on the call tonight is familiar with sprint football. And I love sprint football because, I mean, it's just people with the biggest sense of grit and perseverance. It's skinny dudes on the line of scrimmage just battling. And right now, I'm just going to share a quick highlight film of some of the success that Coach West has had with the sprint football team. And guys, take a look at this. Hey, just give me a thumbs up. Are we looking at only the video screen right now? Perfect. So here it goes.
So Army's in the black. And these are some highlights. Again, now we're in the white, but these are highlights shots from our games against Navy in the past. This was the last championship game in 2019. That was the touchdown that sealed the win for us.
Unreal.
Yeah, that's stuff in their drive, but yeah, it's a wide open game. You mentioned
snap to Dieter Ding, steps up in the pocket, rolls. Another interception.
I'm sorry to cut you off. Keep going, Coach.
No, that's okay.
And you can see it's just played with so much spirit.
Yeah.
And I got to confess too, one of our soldier coaches who we're really proud of, Jacob Eldridge, is a former offensive coordinator for the Navy sprint football team. So you guys battled, and we got him a coaching job. He's now down in L.A., Lower Alabama, coaching it up.
That's awesome. And for those out there that don't know much about sprint football or anything for that matter, it is football with a weight limit. You got to be 108 pounds or less to play. We're the only league of its kind in the country. I stand corrected because they just started a new league in the Midwest, Indiana, Kentucky, Illinois region. They're starting a new sprint league there. So my hope is that it's a sport that's going to continue to grow and give young men who may not have the opportunity to play college football at the D1, D2, or even D3 level because of their size. It just gives them the opportunity to continue to play football, a sport that they love.
Awesome, Coach. So, what are some of the core values that you're instilling in these young men that has led to so much success for decades now?
I certainly can. And for those in the Army on the call tonight or have been in the Army, you know that the Army has its values. The acronym leadership, loyalty, duty, selfless service. We can go through all of them, and of course, those are values that we all live by. At the academy. But one of the things that I've done over the last about 5 or 6 years is to sit down with my seniors. We call them firsties at the beginning of our off-season program. And really develop some additional values that we want to live by, some things that, we want to rally around, values that bring us together as a team. And what we do is we'll take those values once the season starts, and we'll kind of come up with the value of the week. And, this week, for example, it wasn't so much a value as it was just a theme, but the theme for this week, for example, was together. And so the team captain stood up in front of the team, at our weekly meeting yesterday, and talked about that theme and together and what it meant to them, and how it applies to the team and the brotherhood. And those are kind of the watchwords that we rally around each week and remind each other of every week as we prepare for that particular game. So. Values mean a lot to those of us who are in the Army. I think is what makes any organization successful is if you've got strong values that you live by and implement and hold each other to the standard, then those become very valuable. And so for us, not only the Army values but the values that we create each year has helped our program thrive.
Excellent. And prior to us getting on this call, Liam, you brought up something that I wanted you to expound on. Excuse me for putting it on the spot, but it's the concept of reputation. You said like that just means a lot. And as I listened to Coach West talk about all these different values, you have an idea of how this kind of like gets packaged in this concept of reputation. Can you tell us a little bit more about that? Oh, you're muted, Coach.
I got it. Yep. Yeah, I mean, reputation is one of those things I would tell the cadets when I was there, we have all these, the various classes we talk about, but that's the one thing that we don't, but yet it captures everything else, right? So I thought, when I got, went special forces, graduated from special forces qualification course, I get to go to Germany and kind of start anew. Nobody knows who the heck I am, right? But before I even get there, I got a reputation from how I performed in the special forces qualification course, right? I got to write a certain thing because I'm a West Pointer, right? So every organization that you're in, you have a reputation that comes with that, right? If you hear that somebody is a sprint football player from West Point, there's a certain reputation that comes with that before you even meet somebody. And so some of that, right, is from the organizations you're with, and some of it is what you do yourself. And it takes, right, it might take a while to build it up, but it just takes that one bad thing, like a Tiger Woods, for example, right? And your reputation shot, and it takes you a long time, if ever, to get it back. And so that's, one of the things that we really talk to them about.
Yeah, so like there's this idea of like talking to folks about this, right? But how do you get to sink in? And I know Coach West, I mean, you're dealing with, teenagers and young men essentially, right? And they're beginning to create these reputations. And Army Sprint football has a reputation of winning, of championship cultures. So how do you address, or do you even address reputation with these kids? And is it once? Do you do it a lot? Like how do you help formulate their reputation?
It really starts with my vision as the head coach. And it's something that I talk to them about probably every quarter. I break my season down really into, into 4 phases. You've got our out of season phase, that starts in January, leads into our preseason phase, leads into our season itself. And then we have the postseason phase. So I have being an Army guy, when I developed my SOP for the team, if you will, I had a task and purpose and an end state for each one of those phases. And so once a quarter, I bring the team together and talk about our task and purpose for that particular phase and what we're trying to accomplish. But it really all starts with my vision for the team and for the program. And my vision for the program is to be the model athletic program at the United States Military Academy. And if we're doing that across all pillars at West Point, and when I say pillars, I'm talking about the athletic pillar, but I'm also talking about the academic pillar. I'm talking about the military pillar. And if we're being champions in all of those pillars, then the winning's going to take care of itself. And so that's really where it starts for me. When you talk about having a reputation, well, I want my reputation to be, anyone who's looking at the Sprint football program from the outside in, I want them to look at my program, our program, and say, you know what, I wish I was a part of that team, because those guys, not only do they win, but they win the right way. They're just a bunch of good guys out there, who love the game. They love each other. If we're doing all that, then like I said, the winning will take care of itself.
Hey, Harrison.
Yeah.
Hey, the other thing I'll add on that, I mean, besides talking about it, I mean, Mark has it on his team. We had it on our teams when I was at West Point, both as an athlete and a coach later, right? Officer representatives that we call them, right? These are officers that work with the team, but they model what it is, what that is that we want those cadets to become. It doesn't really translate, I guess, to other teams, other places, but there's no reason you couldn't kind of have a similar model with other coaches, right? If you have a little league baseball team or something, what is that equivalent? You involving some of those other parents or something, but something for those kids to look up to, and they're modeling good behavior every day or every time they see these officer representatives. Because ultimately, right, talk is cheap and the action speaks louder than words, but when they see it every day, it just reinforces it.
No doubt. And I'm so glad that this topic came up because we should all consider this for ourselves. As much as we're teaching these young men and women how to create their reputation, to what do they want to be known for, Coach West was talking about creating the situation or the reputation for what he wants to be known for. What is his reputation? What is the Army sprint football reputation? And that's important. Like every single day we go out on a practice field, we're creating our reputation with our players of why they should listen to us, right? Are we accountable? Are we prepared? Are we sincere? Are we authentic? And it's like, because we, as coaches, we stand in front of everyone, all the eyeballs are on us. So we just got to make sure that we are creating the reputation that we want to be known for. And I'm not sure everyone thinks about that all the time. Awesome. Hey, Joe Kane, you have a question. You want to ask your question?
Yeah, before you get off of reputation in the social media age, us older coaches sometimes find out a little too late that a player might be going astray slightly. Anybody doing anything with how some of these players feel their reputation is demonstrated on social media, and then obviously they represent you, right?
That's a really good question. Mark, you want to field that?
Yeah, Joe. Hey, what's up, buddy? That's a great point. Social media rules the day, right? So, I know one, as an athletic department, we've put a lot of time and effort into training all of our cadet athletes to, do the right thing with social media. Our department went as far to go out and actually hire a firm to come in and provide training on what to do and what not to do with social media. For example, a couple of weekends ago we had our first home game. It was an exciting game, obviously, season opener at home, and played a pretty good team in Penn, and it just so happened to be our 30th reunion, right? So class of 91 showed up in big numbers at my game to support me and the team, which was awesome. A lot of my friends were there that I went to school with. And so after the game, I come home and we have a crowd over at the house, a lot of my classmates, and one of my former roommates actually walked up to me and pulled out his phone and showed me a picture of two of my athletes at Southgate, which is a bar here in Highland Falls. And both of these guys were underage. And so thank God he showed it to me, because the first thing I do is I call my captains and I like, get these guys the hell out of the bar. And of course, the next day when we had our team meeting, those guys got to come talk to me. So Joe, you make a great point. It's something that, as an older coach, I can it's easy to lose sight of the fact that, these younger kids are on social media all the time, and all it takes is one slip up and the reputation of your entire team goes down the drain. So I'm glad you brought it up, and it's something that we have to address all the time. I certainly addressed it with the entire team, not only those two individuals, but the entire team at our next team meeting. And I think they got the point, and hopefully we won't have that problem the rest of the year. But you'd think you wouldn't have to address it every year, right? You'd think they would eventually learn, but no, it's something you have to stay on top of year in and year out.
Yeah. So Troy, you have a good question, and I think I'd like to hear Liam's response to this one. Troy, you want to just unmute yourself and ask your question?
Yeah, and it's a little bit of a loaded question because I know both these guys and I've seen them in action, so I know that they do it. But I think that oftentimes coaches think that character development happens implicitly through sport, that by playing sport you develop character. But both of these guys I've seen in action be able to teach it by walking the walk and talking the talk and explicitly outline what character means through sport. And I wondered if they would just give us their ideas on that, because I have seen both of them do it by relating it to what they have done in their job and the way that they teach character on the field through sport.
Yeah, I guess thanks, Troy. Yeah, Troy and I worked together for many years. It was a lot of fun. These are the kind of questions I struggle to come up with an answer sometimes. I'm like, Troy could probably answer this better than I could. You know, sometimes I don't think about how I do it. I just do it. But I mean, anything, right? Again, if someone's struggling or whatever it is, you know, you figure out how to deal with them. But if someone screws up, right, it's not automatically just taking their side and feeling pity for them or something, right? It's figuring out, okay, when do you got to drop the hammer on somebody? When do you recognize someone because, you know, they chose, you know, the harder right over the easier wrong or something like that. But it's more just through those small interactions. And I just don't have I'm sure Mark has a much better answer to this one than I do.
Well,
Mark,
I think,
oh,
well, I think you hit the nail on the head, Liam, when you said it really, you know, in many instances, it's a case by case basis, but it really starts, character development in my mind, at least, starts with establishing expectations and standards, right? And you know, once you do that, then you've got to maintain those standards, and you've got to you know, you got to either, you know, come down on people when they're not meeting the standard, or, you know, recognize folks when they are. And that eventually is going to build that culture that you want. You know, and those that consistently don't meet the standard, well, guess what? You got to have the guts to get rid of them. And that could be a player, that could be a coach, you know, it could be a staff member. You know, I've had to make those tough decisions where, you know, I've let players and coaches go in the past that have consistently not met the standard. So, you know, there's many ways to develop character, and we, you know, this could be the topic all itself. But I really believe it starts with, you know, you setting the expectations and then you enforcing those standards.
Yeah, I mean, I just remembered an example, you know, unfortunately, you know, I guess a negative, whatever example, but when Troy and I were there, we had a team captain that wasn't demonstrating what we expected of a team captain. And so we relieved him of being the team captain because he just wasn't demonstrating what a team captain was to be. And it was to be determined if he would get it back or if he had lost it permanently. And so that's something as simple as that, right? And the rest of the team sees that, and it really drives home, you know, the character matters.
yeah. So Liam, I ask you, were there any like specific character traits that were preventing this captain that from excelling, that you had to really remove him? Like, what was it? What wasn't he or she doing that was meeting the standard?
Oh, Troy, man, maybe you can remember going back that far, but yeah, I mean, I don't remember exactly what it was. But I mean, just not you know, not really looking out for the younger kids on the team. And it was, you know, it had been a culture that, you know, ahead of him that just, it hadn't had as a part of it. You know, there was a transition year or something, right, without a head coach until Troy came on board, and then trying to transition to the right kind of model that we want to demonstrate for the cadets. So, yeah, I mean, like that was the case though, right? You inherit the team that you get when you first show up, and then you see what you can do with them, right? And you're going for a long game, but you can't always get those radical changes right away. Take time.
Yeah, and that brings up some memories for me as well, Liam. I remember I took over the team in 2008, and I took over a team that had a program that had lost 11 straight times to Navy. And anybody that goes to Army knows that that's not acceptable. And I'll never forget that first year as I'm trying to establish my vision for the team. I'm trying to establish these standards, you know, these expectations. I'm literally breaking up fights every day on the field because the offense and defense hated each other so much. And that was something that I guess had happened over the course of several years. And probably the one, and we ended up going 2-5 my first year. And probably the biggest regret I have from that year, and I've told my wife this, who's sitting in on the meeting tonight, but I probably should have gotten rid of every senior on the team. It was just a horrible senior class, and they didn't want to buy into what I wanted to do. But I let them hang around. I ended up cutting a few of them, but I should have replaced the captains. I probably should have gotten rid of the whole class and just started with the juniors, but I didn't, and that's probably a big reason why we went 2-5. But again, that's the hard move to make, right? I mean, it's really difficult to make those really tough decisions. And here I was, a brand new coach, taking over a team for the first time, and I didn't have the guts to do it, but that was a big lesson learned for me.
Guys, on this subject, Brady Nixon I'm going to paraphrase something he said about some advice he was given as an enlisted army, was just, you can be very successful if you're just wearing the right uniform at the right time and be fit. Right. And that's kind of what we were talking about. And those are like some simple things, but that had me thinking about this conversation and some advice that one of my coaching mentors gave me, just in general coaching philosophy. And he used to always talk about accountability and availability. Like, really, that's it. Like, those like the two things. Like, are you accountable, and are you available? Are you just showing up? And I don't know how you guys feel, but that kind of seems to me like the foundation in which everything else is, kind of built upon, in terms of, making sure you're creating the culture that you want. Any quick thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, I'll just jump in with a Rudy related comment again. I mean, we had some guys that, some classmates of mine when I was on the track and cross country team, and they struggled academically. And I'd be like, hey, you've got to get the minimum grade point if you want to compete. If you can't compete, what good are you on the team if you're on academic probation or something? So yeah. You need to be, you don't have to excel there, but you at least need to succeed there. Otherwise, you're not available, right? And be smart about how you can get there. So, I mean, I mean, I definitely think, even at that level, you've got to do it. Or the same thing, right? In junior high and high schools, it's the same thing, right? If they don't have a certain academic standing, they can't play. And I really, it's hard for coaches to sit out a star player, but I think in the long term, it's good for that athlete. It's good for the team. Even if the team takes a loss that you attribute to sitting down a star player or something, I think in the long run, you're helping that individual out, and probably everybody on that team, as painful as that is.
Yeah, it's tough. So Jennifer Schmolt, you have a great question here. Sorry to cut you off, Mark. Let's have Jen ask this question, and I think it's going to tee you up.
Okay, so we kind of got into the developmental realm and the disciplinary realm. So I was just wondering, when you go into these meetings, obviously, if somebody does something wrong, you're going to reprimand them, you're going to have a conversation, but how do you turn it from something negative into something more developmental? I mean, they're still students, they obviously have to learn, they're young, but what are your touch points going into conversations like that?
Yeah, that's a good question. For me, if it's a simple error like being late for practice or late for a meeting, typically that's some type of punishment, where they're going to run or they're going to do,
Hey, running, isn't that a reward?
Yeah. But if it's more egregious error, I do turn it into a developmental opportunity. I typically get what we call the chain of command involved. We have position group leaders. Of course, we have our offensive and defensive captains. And for example, if someone were to get what we call a board at West Point, where you get in big time trouble for, say, drinking when you shouldn't have been, or some other egregious error. What I do is I'll have that particular person put together a briefing, if you will, where they get to address the team and really kind of fess up, if you will, take accountability. I know Harrison mentioned that word, take accountability for their action, one, but two, address the team and how their error affected the team, and then what they are doing to correct it. So that's one of the ways that I try to develop the players, because it is a leadership development institution. That's what we do at West Point. So I try to take advantage of those opportunities whenever I can.
Awesome answer. So, thinking about leadership and high performance, Liam and I got a chance to discuss, a Halo mission that he was on in our podcast, and it was just fascinating. And as we talk about how these lessons learned can really build young men up to doing great things, like, this Halo mission. Can you just describe, Liam, what that mission is? What does it mean to be to do a Halo drop? And in order to execute something like this, what were some of the lessons you've learned that have become implicit in you? Because you're almost alone, right? This is a very high risk maneuver, and you have to have a lot of confidence in your ability to perform in this situation. So how have some of these lessons allowed you to, execute such a task?
Yeah. I mean, I think so. To kind of explain a little bit, I think I see Rhino out in the audience somewhere, so he knows this probably fairly well. But so when you're Halo, right? High altitude, low opening is what it stands for. Think of skydiving, but with the military, right? So we kind of take the fun out of everything because we throw a bunch of equipment and all kinds of weight on you. But we were, trying to get into Afghanistan. The Taliban had just lost Kabul, and so commanding general asked me if I could get somebody, get on the road that runs between Kabul and Kandahar, which was the Taliban stronghold. And he said, "Can you get in there by tomorrow night?" And I said, "Well, I can get in there tomorrow night, but I'm gonna have to basically do this military skydiving, this Halo operation to get in there, because it's the only safe way to get in there. You can't exactly drive in there in 24 hours, right? You can't, if you go in with a helicopter, right, then you're gonna land, and you're pretty much giving away your position. So this was really or a static line, like a lower altitude parachute opening, right? You're overflying the area. It's, too much of a risk. So it was really the only way in. And from our understanding, it was the first time the Army had jumped into, done a Halo mission into combat since Vietnam, and all those are rumored to be failures. So we had a lot riding on it to go in there, but it was the right call, and we went in there. So we came in from 18,000 feet and opened from about 12,000 to 15,000 feet. But like Harrison, what he was saying is, right, when you come under a canopy, it's pitch black, 0% illumination. The moon is down. There's not a lot of ambient light in Afghanistan in 2001, maybe somebody with a campfire somewhere. But there wasn't a whole lot of electricity at that time. And so it was dark as heck under there. And I'm the youngest or most inexperienced guy, yet I'm in charge of the operation. And the only thing the most thing I'm thinking of is just don't screw this up, right? Because you're going to mess this up. Then every officer after that, right, is right. You can't mess that up, or you'll never hear the end of it, right? And neither will the officers that come behind you or your peers. So, it's a longer story or whatever, but kind of what I think set up. And then once we hit the ground, right, carrying a ton of weight, because we needed to be self-sufficient until we left. So, it was, walking across freaking rugged, crappy terrain that was rutted, rocky, uneven. And as one of my sergeant majors, when I describe it to him, it was like, think of, what the heck is the Armageddon, right? When Billy Bob Thornton's character or Owen Wilson's character asks Billy Bob Thornton when they're trying to go in and drill the asteroid, right? What the surface of the asteroid is going to be like. And Billy Bob Thornton's character describes it in all the scientific terms. And then Owen Wilson's character's like, worst thing you could possibly imagine. That's all you had to say. Worst thing you could possibly imagine. Well, that's what the surface of freaking Afghanistan was, where we were landing. That was the worst thing you could possibly imagine. But I think what set us up for success for that operation, right? And we had 24 hours to get ready. So it wasn't like we could go out and practice it and do anything. But before 9/11 had even happened, I had just finished our Halo school, or military free fall school, as we call it, 2 months prior. So I'm fresh out of the school. But even then, a month after I'm out of the school and before we went to Afghanistan, we basically practiced that same mission and training, right? So even though we never expected to do that, we had trained for it, right? Just like in any kind of sport, right? The success comes from the training, right? It could be football, maybe some special teams player, something you think you're never going to have to execute. And holy crap, that situation presents itself where you have to do it, or you get the opportunity to, and you're like, we've practiced this thing. It might work, right? And so the training paid off. And then, being physically fit, obviously helped for there. And then the other part of that, again, I was relatively new commander, but we had done enough training in the previous 2 or 3 months that we trusted one another, right? Or more importantly, they trusted me, probably more important than me trusting them, because of course I trusted my guys, but I had to establish that relationship where they trusted me and having time to build that. And so we knew we were going to be successful.
Well, you had to be successful, otherwise it was certain death. You're not on this call discussing it, right? As far as I know, like from our conversation, you're out there alone with your gear, and it's one thing to get there, but you left the part about now you got to get out, right?
Yeah, right. Yeah, you got to get out, and the other piece is, it comes from, we planned, right? We didn't assume like, hey, no one's going to find us, this or that, right? We planned for the worst case scenario, and then if that happens, we can mitigate against it, right? If worst case, if we get compromised and someone comes after us, right? Even with very small teams, right? We're on high elevation, we can hold them off with their sniper rifles, wait till, use air support to take them out, and then get it, exfilled, off the mountaintop or something that night. But it wasn't, we put ourselves in a position where we're going to be less at risk for that happening. I mean, we did not want to come out of there and write a book or have a movie out of it, right? Because that usually means bad thing happens. No one writes a book or makes a movie when things go according to plan.
And that's advice I need right now. Let me tell you what. But, so what I hear you say in there, Liam, is, it's preparation, it's planning, and the consistent drill work you did. You were fresh out of that. And, all of us as coaches, we plan, we go into games with game plans and practice plans, but yet some are more effective than others, right? And this is a very sophisticated operation that you're doing. And, now Mark, you've been successful in your preparation and your planning. So why do some sports teams, everyone does the same drills, right? People have very similar practice plans. There's a little bit of a deviation, but I'm pretty sure with football, most folks are doing the same types of work in their indie periods. Everyone's doing a 7-on-7 skelly period, et cetera, et cetera. Is there any wisdom or anything that you do that makes your preparation so successful over time, very similar to the way Liam was able to prepare, go in and extract without any adversity?
Yeah, I mean, I really don't know what other teams do. I've never been to their practices, to watch how they practice. I do know that my coaching staff and I spend a lot of time designing our practice plans. We literally account for every minute of every practice. So if nothing else, we know that our practices are efficient, and we know that our practices are getting at the result that we want. So it is something that we review every week. We, for the most part, we use, the same practice plan every week. However, we do make tweaks based on our opponent, based on time. You know, there's points in the season when we recognize that our players are, maybe going through what we call a Thayer week, when, they're getting pounded by the dean, the academics. And so maybe we decide to shorten practice a little bit that week. Of course, you have to take into account the injuries and, hey, do we need to take that into account? So, again, I don't know what other teams do, but I do know that we spend a lot of time every week designing our practice plan to make sure it meets the needs of what we want to accomplish, and it's as efficient as possible.
Hey, Harrison, what I would add is, whenever I would go into an operation in Afghanistan or Iraq, every time as I'm like going to the target, doesn't matter if I'm walking there, flying there, driving there, I would never think about what I had to do on the target, because I knew how to do that, right? I had done it so many times, either in training or in practice. All I thought about on the way there was everything that could possibly go wrong, right? What happens if we get ambushed here? What happens if this happens, right? So I'm thinking of everything that could possibly go wrong. So when it happens, you're ready for it, even if it's not the exact same thing. I guess in kind of like, in some of the team sports worlds, it'd be kind of like the same thing, right? If a quarterback's worried about what the play is and he doesn't know, right? He's thinking about, okay, these are the receivers, where are they going again? But if you've done it with so many repetitions, he doesn't have to think, right? As soon as he calls in the play, he knows what it is, and he's automatic. Now he can look at the defense, look at other things, right? And so it's getting that repetition where they know it. And that's, you can, in sports, right? They might have a bigger playbook for someone that can handle it, or as they grow into it, or smaller, right? Based on their capacity, right, or their experience or something.
And not just repetition, which is true, but it's about quality, right? The quality of the repetition. And, for football, it's making sure the scout team, for example, knows exactly how to replicate this week against Navy. Our scout team, on every play that they run against our number ones, they know exactly what to do for every play that they run against them. And we emphasize that in our team meeting, and then we emphasize that on the field, obviously, when we practice. So it's not just repetition, but it's quality repetition done realistically as possible, right? We run, the speed of the game is typically what catches teams by surprise on game day. And so we do our best to replicate not only the play that the other team is running, but to run it as high speed as we possibly can.
Yeah, and that's what requires a ton of planning. To get quality repetitions, there's so many variables that you have to think out and plan for to make sure that you get the most juice out of the squeeze in your practice, like time efficient. Like Liam was talking about doing a quick calculation of how much effort he needs to do for every second to score, a certain amount above his fitness test, and does that quick risk analysis. It's like the same thing, we need to be doing as coaches as we're planning our practices. Like, how are we teaching, the scout team to be as effective as possible? How are we teaching our players to know how to transition between drills? Right? How are we teaching our players to know how to execute the practice plan on time? And so it's like my wife always used to joke with me in just complete bewilderment, like, how come you guys meet so much? It's like, well, we have to meet to plan the meetings that we're getting ready to execute to get them to go out. And so it just takes so much time. And I think, that's one of the things in coaching that often gets overlooked, especially, when you're all excited to get out there and, we think, oh, we get to be on the field, or we get to be on the court, and we get to throw around the ball, and, the kids are going to love me. The reason your players love you is because you put all that time in to plan to make sure that they can get the most quality out of the reps.
And as a coach, one of your responsibilities is you've got to look for that complacency, right? When you're on the field, if you see it, you've got to correct it. But then after practice, you've got to go back and find out, well, why were they being complacent? Is it because maybe the practice is too monotonous? Is it because they're tired because they had to lift this morning at 5:30? Is it because, half of them had a Thayer week and they're taking exams and they're exhausted because they only got 4 hours of sleep last night? That's one of your key responsibilities as a coach is here you've gone into planning these practices to be as efficient, as effective as possible. Yet when they're not, and you can see it. I mean, as a head coach or a coach on the field, you can see when those practices are becoming complacent. At least I hope you can. You've got to figure out why, because it may not always be just because the players are being complacent. There's the reason behind it. And that's the challenge for a coach, right, is to figure out why and to correct it and to do better the next time.
And it sounds like you're looking inward of like what you can do to correct it, not just putting it on the player to be like, they're lazy, they're not paying attention. You're talking about how you can affect the response from the player.
Absolutely. Because I'm lucky. I coach, A positive personalities who, they want to succeed. They want to be champions. They want to be the best at what they do. So, whenever I have those moments when things are becoming complacent, it's typically not the players. It can be, don't get me wrong, but you do have to take that look inward to say, okay, what are some of the things we need to do to change this?
Good point. Now I want to direct this question towards Liam because as you and I were talking, you were even alluding to it earlier. You have like this instinct. You just do. You've been a high performer for such a long time, and as Mark's talking about coaching sprint football players at West Point, there's a bunch of like type A high performers. So Liam, how do you handle leading, coaching, and developing folks that don't have your drive for excellence, right? Aside from setting the standards, like does that frustrate you at times? Like how do you bring like real mediocre effort up to a higher standard?
Yeah, I mean, I have probably less experience at that, right? At the lower level you're going to get more of that, but coaching at the, Division I collegiate level and national and international level, right? By the time you get there, you've got people that are driven, right? They're going for an Olympic medal. You don't always, usually the motivation isn't the problem on those folks. But for others, I mean, that is it's a challenge. And I mean, I would usually sit down and talk with them and try to figure out what their priorities are and get them to and try to understand what the priority is for them. Because, for some, when I was an athlete or a coach, right, their sport might be their number one priority. And for others, right, maybe it's like number 2 or 3, right? Academics, religion, family, or whatever, and then the sport might come. And so at least you understand where it fits into there for their priorities, but still trying to maximize or get the most out of them. But yeah, trying to motivate and unmotivated, you give it time, but at an elite level, I mean, this isn't, they've got to want it, kind of like Afghanistan, right? The Afghanis got to want it more than we want it for them. So
that's the pickle, right? This is like the ultimate pickle. Yeah, go ahead, Mark.
Well, here I've been talking about sprint football and the collegiate level, and I've also coached the youth level as well. I've coached my kids in football and baseball, basketball, and what I've learned from coaching at that level is that I can still apply the same principles that I use as a Division I coach with the youth, and because again, it goes back to that word you used, I believe, Harris, at the beginning, reputation, right? If you be yourself and you coach, the way you believe in coaching, then, those children that you're coaching are, you're going to be a good model for them. And they're going to understand that, hey, Coach West, he means business. And the parents are going to see the same thing. They're going to look at you as a coach who cares about their kids, who wants the best for their kids, who wants to teach them life values. We talked about values. There's no reason why you can't, try to implement those same values with youth the same way you do with college athletes. So for me, my coaching style, whether I'm coaching at the youth level or I'm coaching at the collegiate level, my coaching style has really never changed. Maybe the empathy level might change a little bit, but for the most part, I pretty much use the same standards for every level I've coached at.
Yeah, and it's like, yeah, we can keep those standards, and in every single team, you always have like your upper 20%, right? And then you have like the middle 60% and the bottom 20%, right? It's just the way it is. And we all have been on teams, and coach teams that you have your folks that are just so psyched to have the jersey, they want to be a part of it. And, and sometimes it can be frustrating because, I just look at Liam, who's in that upper like 1% of the 20. And then as you're leading, it's
No, hey, as an athlete in college, I felt like the bottom 20%, man. And even in units, I was in the Army. I was sprinting to keep up the whole time, right? I'm like, surround yourself by the best. I want to be the worst person on a winning team rather than the best person on a losing team. I want to be the dumbest person in the room I'm at, right? That's it. I want to be surrounded by talent, right? I don't want to, if I'm the smartest one in there, I got to get out of that room, right?
Yeah.
But yeah.
Well, that's what I'm saying, right? So that's what puts you in the 1% is that attitude, right? So it's not necessarily like the talent, the home runs you hit, the touchdowns you score, the speed that you're running at, it's if you can coach 100 Liam Collins, you're going to figure it out and you're going to win, right? Because it's that effort. It's the focus to try to be the best and surround yourself with everyone better than you. The folks that are just happy to wear the jersey, like they don't really want to work that hard. Like, it's not even about talent, it's about effort. So my question, and I think everybody in this room has dealt with this at some point, it's totally contextual, but how do you get the effort of that middle of the road folks to want it as bad as Liam, to want to push up there? Like that is, tough.
Yeah. Example, cross country is a little different because it's an individual sport that's, a team sport at the same time, but right. And it's pure times, right? So it doesn't rely on other players, right? It's just a person against the clock, where they're at. And I thought when I got there, Troy and I got there about the same time, and we had this massive team that, no one was cut. And it seemed like there was a lot of people just kind of happy to be on a Division I team that really shouldn't be there. And we talked and we said, hey, you got this middle group that's just kind of happy, right? They're not quite varsity, but they're hanging around. I go, again, this is not for the high school level or something else, but we got to cut these bottom people, right? This Division I, we're trying to create a culture of winning here. If we get rid of the bottom 20%, right now, whoever was in the middle is that bottom 20%, right? And they're not just cruising, happy now. They've got to work or they're going to be off the team. Again, I don't want to make this a negative thing, but if it's about winning, right, at an elite level, sometimes that's what it takes. I guess the positive ones are harder to pull out sometimes, but that was how we got that culture of winning back. Is really just the ones that were happy to be there. We said, hey, this is what it is. And it didn't hurt if we ran an indoor 5K and I was 40 years old and beat them on the indoor track. Hey, you probably don't need to be running Division I track.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you talk about how we bring out that, the best in everyone, including that middle percent or bottom percent. For me, I think, it really starts with the head coach, the leader of the team. And one word I like to use is passion. Okay. I know everyone has different levels of passion for a particular sport, but if you find yourself coaching a team and you don't really have passion for that sport that you're coaching, chances are you're not gonna influence anyone on that team to try to at least have the same, that same level of passion. So, if you have that passion and you make it fun for your players, and they see that passion in you each and every day, when you bring that out to the field, and you're excited to be there, and you want to not only just win. I mean, everybody wants to win, but you want to just become better each and every day. If you bring that to the field or the court or whatever it is each and every day, regardless of the age group that you're coaching, that's what you're trying to do, right? Especially with the youth, right? You're gonna coach these little 12-year-old baseball teams who have kids that they don't know if they like baseball or not. They're just being told to go play baseball. But if you're bringing that passion out to the field every day, next thing you know, you might convince a few kids on that team that, you know what, I think I really like this sport. Maybe I want to become good at it, because you are being that passionate example that they can follow. So to me, that's really where it starts. If you want to try to get people truly involved and become better at their sport.
Certainly passion is fun. It really is. So folks, we are knocking on the door at the top of our hour here. And, I'm just so grateful that everyone was able to show up because, these kinds of candid conversations and are great. This is how we improve our coaching craft because it's different. Everyone has a different perspective, and hearing from each other and asking these questions and sharing these stories, as esoteric as the experiences might be, like, jumping out of a plane and doing a halo drop. I mean, that there's things that we can all learn from each other. And I'm just so grateful that everyone took the time to hear from the legendary Coach Mark West and the legendary Liam Collins here. And, I know they both hate that word, but it's really the passion that they bring to their leadership that makes them legendary. And you can just tell by the dozens of beer mugs behind Coach West and the dozens of books behind Liam Collins how this thing gets set up. But with that, Liam, do you want to any last words, pieces of wisdom that we can walk away with tonight?
Yeah, I mean, just kind of wrap up some of the things we talked about. I mean, I think between passion and having a well-organized plan, practice for them, right? If you're a new coach and you just kind of don't know what the hell you're doing, hey, as long as it's organized, you get out there, right? You're learning just like they are, you'll get there, right? And the athletes will get there. So you don't have to worry if it's necessarily the perfect practice, right? Whatever that is, right? That you can't achieve anyway. And you learn as you go. So, it's portraying that confidence to the athletes. So, I mean, that's what I would, kind of wrap it up with. You got to have the passion for it and go out there. But it's, again, just like Rudy, it's not just passion that matters. You got to work for it, right? And if you're going to be a coach, you got to work. You can't just wear the coaching uniform and show up on game day.
Yeah, it's a grind. It's definitely a grind. Whatever level you're coaching at, if you want to be good at it, there's no doubt about that. But before we sign off, I do want to give in one last plug. Army Navy sprint football. If anyone's interested at all in watching a sprint football game, this is the game to watch. Saturday, 1:00. It's going to be live streamed on our website, goarmysports.com. Would love for you guys to jump on and check out the game. It's going to be really exciting. Typically comes down to the wire. I mean, I hope we blow them out. I really do. But that's pretty rare. So typically comes down to the fourth quarter, and whoever can execute the best and has the most discipline, typically wins the game. So thanks so much for letting me be a part of this. This has been awesome. I'm always available if anyone ever wants to reach out. I'll be happy to talk to you about coaching, leadership, whatever it is. And I'll drink a beer with you too. No problem with that.
Cheers. So, we just had one last question that I can just end on this. And I'm so excited that we have people in our tribe bring other folks in, even for the first time. And we had a question, if someone just wants to know, like, who the frick are these guys talking right now? So everyone, this is Soldiers to Sidelines, and our mission is to develop, certify, and educate transitioning service members, veterans, and military spouses to become great coaches, right? We're providing a renewed sense of purpose through coaching. So everybody here has served their country in the military and now continue to serve in their community as a coach. And we're all committed to improving our coaching crafts because as we all know, we are all coaches every single day in every aspect of our lives, whether we realize it or not. And this makes us all better, happier, healthier, and has a tremendous impact on society. So thank you all for developing your coaching craft. Thank you for being here. And we look forward to next time. Good night, everyone.
All right.